We are so impressed with the fantastic work that you have submitted so far on the individuals that we have asked you to study for the 100 Great Black Britons project. And we'd like to give you some updates on some exciting things that are happening in the history department. Sybil Phoenix's son, Woodrow Phoenix, has promised to send us a video next week about his mum that he is making specially for us. He is a very successful individual in his own right who works as a graphic novel and an illustrator, and he has said that he will also come in to visit us next year. Another exciting guest who has offered to come and speak to us at Deptford Green is Eddie Bozio. Eddie is an award-winning journalist and broadcaster who has worked with the BBC and ITN. He is also a photographer and writer and was responsible for commissioning documentaries about the New Cross Fire and Black People's Day of Action. Eddie has also recently written a monologue in response to the killing of George Floyd, which is part of an online series that is going to be broadcast from the Theatre Royal in Stratford, and we hope to share the link to this exciting work with you soon. And lastly, we have also arranged for historian Stephen Bourne, who is an expert in the life and work of Dr. Harold Moody, as well as black soldiers from World War I, to come in and speak with us once we're back in the autumn term. So, even though your work on the project is going to finish at the end of this term, there's lots to look forward to once we're back at school too. This week, the work that we want you to do is slightly different. We are still working on the 100 Great Black Britons project, but now it is your turn to choose an individual and do some research of your own. So, before you do your research, your first job is to decide who you want to make the focus of your work for the next 2 weeks. You need to choose someone from the existing list of 100 Great Black Britons that is on their website. The link for this can be found on Show My Homework or at the bottom of the slide shown on the screen now. You need to think about the sort of person you want to teach other people about. Are you interested in their gender? Do you want to study someone from a particular historical period? Perhaps you are really interested in the Tudors, the Victorian era, or maybe you want someone more modern. Maybe what matters most for you is the area that they worked in, such as arts, culture, or science. You might also want to consider their background, such as whether they were working class, middle class, upper class. Maybe the country that they came from originally is of interest to you, or perhaps you're interested in where they lived once they moved to the UK. Maybe you really enjoyed looking at people from our local area, for instance. Lastly, you might want to think about whether the person that you are planning to research is already very famous or someone that actually you think deserves to be more famous, and that's why you would like to make a piece of work about them. So, as we've already said, your first task for this week is to go onto the link that we have given you to the list of 100 Great Black Britons. You can click on the different names of the people once you're on the list. When you click on a person's name, it will give you a brief overview of who they were and why they were important. Have a look at a few different people and decide who you want to make the focus of your work for the next 2 weeks. Now on to the main task for this week. We want you to start gathering information about the individual that you have chosen. We are not expecting you to produce a presentation this week. You are spending your allocated history work time gathering information about the individual that you want to learn about. So, before you start to learn more about them, you need to consider how best to do your research over the internet. In history, we look at all kinds of sources, and obviously for this you're going to be using electronic sources to compile your research on your individual, but it's important that the information you get is of good quality. So, each time you go to a website, you should be asking yourself some questions, such as, is it relevant? By this, we mean, does it tell you the sort of information that will help you to make an accurate and engaging piece of work next week? Think about if it's relevant for you personally. If it's been written for experts or people at university and the language is really complicated, it might be at the wrong level for you, and perhaps you should look somewhere else. Then again, maybe it's been written for primary school students, and actually there's not enough detail for the sort of research that you want to do. Next, you should be thinking about who wrote this information. Are they an authority? What we mean by an authority here is that they are an expert. Often, it's helpful to work out if they are linked to an institution or an important organisation that we think can be trusted, such as a charity or a university. If the person is a teacher, that might be quite helpful. Perhaps you also want to look at the work of some journalists. But think about who the person is that wrote the information that you're reading. If by this point you've decided the website you found is relevant and that it's been written by someone you can trust, next start to think about how accurate the information you've gathered is. If you find some interesting facts about your individual, cross-check them with another site to see if you can find them in a variety of places. If you can find them in lots of different places, it's more likely that they are true and correct. Also, think about what it is you are reading. Is it facts or is it someone's opinion? Which links to our next point of purpose. Why did someone decide to put this information on the internet? Are they being biased or subjective and trying to get us to think in a certain way and for a certain reason? Do they have a reason to dislike or really like something that means we shouldn't really trust the information they've given us? If the website that you have found does give relevant information about your individual, and the person or organisation who has written it can be considered to be an authority, you think that the facts you are reading are accurate because you've checked them with some other sites too, and you think they had good and genuine reasons for giving the information to us, then that sounds like a great place to do some research. To help you out with your research, on slide 4 we've given you a list of some websites that we think are a good place for you to start looking for information for your individual once you've chosen them from the list on the 100 Great Black Britons website. In fact, the first link is that list. Then we've got the Black Cultural Archives and the Windrush Foundation, who are both organisations that are trustworthy and who have done a lot of useful in-depth research into important Great Black Britons. You might not be able to find everyone from the list of 100 people here, but for a lot of you, it will be a good place to start. There is a link also to BBC Black History Month resources and the official Black History Month UK website. Again, not everyone will be on there, but lots of people will find these sites helpful. And then finally, there's the National Archives Black Presence exhibition. This is a bit more narrow, but the National Archives is a really interesting place to look for original sources. They're based in West London and lots of historians go there to do their research. You can look around their site more generally. You may find that there's individuals listed on there that aren't part of this particular exhibition. Slide 5 is where we want you to begin to put together the research that you carry out this week. In the first blue box at the top, you're going to just simply write the name of the individual that you've chosen. Then, in the blue box in the middle, you're going to explain why you chose that person. Was it because of something in particular about them that interested you? Was it because you thought that they would be easy to learn about because there was lots of information readily available on them? Give us your reasoning for choosing your person. Then in the final blue box and the green one below it, you're going to paste 2 different images that you think you might use when you put your work together next week. In the bigger green box in the middle of the slide, write at least 5 facts that you have found out about your individual that you think you're likely to want to share in your work next week. Then in the yellow box at the bottom of the page, we'd like you to paste a minimum of 3 website links that you have found and used for your research so that we can check that the sites you are using are a good place to get information from. As always, our template is just a starting point, and if you want to put together lots more research with more information about your individual, more links to useful sites, more images or anything else that you've found, of course you're welcome to add in extra slides to the presentation and include as much as you want before you submit your work for this week. Your final task for this week is on slide 6, and it's a blank template for a multiple choice quiz on the individual that you have been researching. Obviously, we can't make a quiz about all the different people that will be researched by all the different students. So instead, it's your job to put together 6 questions that we could use to test someone's knowledge about your individual after they have seen the work that you're going to produce next week. For each one, write in the question, a correct answer, and then 3 incorrect answers. The piece of work that you are going to produce about your individual next week will be submitted for the 100 Great Black Britons competition. So far, we have asked you to make a PowerPoint each week about the people that we thought it would be interesting for you to learn about. But the way that you present the information for your competition piece is completely up to you. You might want to make a PowerPoint that is similar to the ones we've done before, Or perhaps you'd like to write a short essay. You might want to make a video about your individual or an audio recording. Perhaps you want to produce a poster or a leaflet. The options for how you present your information are endless, and the more creative your entries are, the better. We're not expecting you to do this next week, but start thinking about how you're going to put your research into something that you can submit for the competition.